All right, so Mounce chapter 17, contract verbs. In order to really understand this type of verb, we have to understand the concept of contractions first. And this is where vowels come together. And when they come together, they can contract and become a long vowel. This is a peculiarity of the Greek language. There are other languages where things can contract like this, but we're going to be focusing on it in Greek. Now, first things first, a contract verb is a verb whose stem ends with one of three contract vowels. Okay? So we're dealing with contract vowels. What are these vowels? They are the vowels epsilon, omicron, and alpha. Epsilon, omicron, and alpha. So let's take for a minute the paradigm verb that we learned for the present active indicative. What was that verb? Luo. What is the present stem of luo? It's lu. Does luo's stem end with a vowel? Yes. Upsilon. Is that a contract vowel? No. There are three contract vowels. Epsilon, omicron, and alpha. Okay, so if the stem ends with one of those, then it is a contract verb. One example of a contract verb would be the verb that has to do with doing or making. Poi e is the stem of that verb. Poi e. There it ends with an epsilon. The lexical form is poi eo. Okay, poi eo. Now, the lexical form gives you the stem followed by the omega that you're accustomed to seeing on first-person singular forms. And if you've got a contract verb, you're going to drop the omega on the lexical form and you're left with the stem. So poi eo. I like to refer to those as eo verbs. Okay? Now, agapao is the lexical form for to love. Agapao. So what is the stem here? Agapa. Okay? And that would be an ao verb. And then one other verb that we're going to be spending time looking at in this chapter is play ra'o. It means to fill or fulfill. Play ra'o. What is the stem? Play ra. It's got an omicron stem, right? Alpha, epsilon. These are contract vowels. And I call those uh-oh verbs. Contract verbs are going to behave all in a very similar way, and we'll learn about that here as we come. Now, here's the problem with contract verbs. These contract vowels, epsilon, omicron, and alpha, will be followed by connecting vowels in Greek, right? Think about luo. We had lu plus, what were my two connecting vowels? Omicron or epsilon, and then we had our personal endings after that, right? Okay, what's going to happen with these contract verbs is I'm going to have something like poia, and then I'm going to have an omicron or an epsilon connecting vowel, and then I'll have my personal ending. And it's the vowel, that's the end of the verb stem, that contract vowel, and the connecting vowel are going to interact with each other and form contractions. And we're going to learn what those contractions are. And they'll become some other vowel. Aside from the contractions occurring before these personal endings, so I'll abbreviate that with PE here, okay? Everything else is going to be normal about contract verbs. They are going to use the same personal endings, those same inflectional endings for the present active indicative that you've already learned. So I'm not asking you to learn new endings. I'm just asking you in this chapter to recognize that there are going to be some funky little vowel changes before the personal endings that you've just learned. Okay? The good news here is that you'll still be able to parse your contract verbs for the most part by looking at the endings. So Mounce gives you a couple of examples of that, and why don't we just look at those real quickly at the top of page 141. Okay? Okay, so here we have the actual verb forms that are contract verbs with the contract vowel. Notice that the endings here are not too difficult, are they? Poyumen, what is the person and number of the personal ending here? It's first person plural, right? Men. And then for now, everything is present active indicative. Yes? Okay. So this means we do something. Okay? Play rute. What's the personal ending? Second plural. So who's doing the action here? You or y'all, plural. All right? Agapas. What do we got here? Yes, there's a sigma at the end of this puppy, right? It would have been iota sigma, but what happened to the iota? It's subscripted under the alpha. Recognizable, though, second singular. Who's doing this? You, singular. Poyo. It's a first person singular. I'm doing this. And agaposin. Yeah, this is third plural. Now you're accustomed to usin, aren't you? But notice that the sin, or the C with the movable nu, is the same. It's just that the vowels that are occurring before these connecting vowels, they're just a little bit funny, aren't they? All right? So, really nothing new here except the contractions themselves. And that's what we're going to focus on at the beginning of this, this part of the handout. So, Mounce gives us the most common vowel contractions in Greek. And he refers to these as the big five. The big five. Now, pedagogically, I don't prefer to do this the way that Mounce does. In that he likes to start with what the resultant contraction is on the left side, and then to show you what it was that produced it on the right. To me, it just makes sense to start with what you have on the left and then moving to the right to show you what it becomes. So that's what I'm doing. This little symbol here that looks like a greater than sign, just remember this isn't math, so this doesn't mean greater than. What this means is becomes. So where the point is, that's pointing in the direction of what these things become or change into. Now, when I have an omicron coming into contact with an epsilon, it's going to become the diphthong U, omicron upsilon. On the other hand, when I have an epsilon meeting an omicron, it will become omicron upsilon 2. And when I have an omicron meeting an omicron, they will contract and become omicron upsilon. In other words, all three of these combinations of vowels will contract to form this long diphthong. And almost always, the diphthong will have a circumflex over the second member of the diphthong. So you should get used to seeing circumflexes. Circumflexes can only go over long vowels, and diphthongs are long, right? Okay, so O, E, E, O, O, O. All of those produce U. Okay? Now, let's just take an example here. Let's take poi-e. This is the verb that means to do or make. That's the present stem. Let's say we want to say we do. I'm going to add men. What's going to be my connecting vowel before moos and news? Omicron. So I'm going to have an omicron here. Now, look at the epsilon and the omicron. These two vowels, when they meet each other, are going to undergo contraction, and they're going to become one long vowel. What does an epsilon omicron produce? O-U, oo, right? So we get poi, umen, and there is a circumflex over that upsilon. Poiumen. We do. We make. All right? So that's just an example of why knowing these contractions or knowing which consonants produce which contraction is helpful. Okay? All right. Let's look at the second one here. This is another very popular contraction in Greek. Two epsilons that come together are going to produce a diphthong as well. And it's going to be an epsilon iota. So double epsilon produces epsilon iota. Example. Let's talk about poi to do or make. Second person plural, personal ending, te. What's going to be my contract vowel right here? It's going to be an epsilon, right? And now the epsilon is going to contract and produce what? Yeah, epsilon iota diphthong. And guess what? My circumflex is going to go over that iota. Poiete. Poiete. Y'all are doing. Y'all are making. All right? Make sense? Okay. Very good. Let's look at the third one. Here, an alpha meeting an omicron is going to produce an omega. Here is the deal with all forms of omicron and omega meeting a vowel. Omicron and omega with any vowel is going to contract to an omega, except for the situations in number one. Okay, we have omicrons over here, don't we? So these will produce oo, and any other combination of omicron with a vowel or omega with a vowel is going to produce an omega, as we have in number 3. Okay? The reason we've picked out alpha omicron is because we have a verb to love, which has the stem aga pa. Okay? That's the contract vowel, the alpha. And if I want to say we love, I'm going to add men. What vowel will I put in front of the mu? Omicron. And alpha omicron produces what contraction? Omega. And look at how big that omega is. And it gets a circumflex too. Okay? So agapomen. Agapomen. We love. We love. All right. Now, let's take a look at number 4. And really, number 4 and number 5, we could construe together because they're really the same vowels, but just in opposite sequences, right? Okay. I like the way Mounce describes this. The contraction that's produced here is really dependent on what he calls the who got there first rule. So alpha and epsilon are the two vowels in question. If the alpha gets there first, then what alpha epsilon produces is a long version of the first vowel. Well, what does a long alpha look like? It looks like that. That's right. If the epsilon gets there before the alpha, the epsilon becomes a long epsilon. Well, what's a long epsilon? It's an eta, okay? So whatever's there first, alpha epsilon or epsilon alpha, becomes the long version of what got there first. Okay? So let's just use this as an example here. We have agapao. And let's say we want to say, you all, plural, love. Agapa, te, what's my connecting vowel before the personal ending? It's an epsilon, and the alpha epsilon is going to contract and become what? What kind of alpha? That's a long one. It's short before, right? But now it is long. I'll make the little Jesus fish here. agapate. Okay? So you all love. All right. And then we have, let's see. The example he gives from 5 is really not something we're going to see for a while, so I won't exemplify that. Just be aware that these two go together, and the eta will be produced if the epsilon comes before the alpha.